Let's therefore from there turn to a special guest this evening. Celebrated actor Naseeruddin Shah recently released a video appealing to certain sections of Indian Muslims to stop celebrating the barbaric Taliban's return to power in Afghanistan. Barbaric, a word used by him. His comments angered some sections of the Muslim community. Tonight, in a moment, I'll speak to the actor about why he feels the way he does on a variety of issues involving religious extremism. But first, listen to a clip of the video of Naseeruddin Shah that went viral.
हालांकि अफगानिस्तान में तालिबान का दोबारा हुकूमत पा लेना दुनिया भर के लिए फिक्र का बायस है, इससे कम खतरनाक नहीं है हिंदुस्तानी मुसलमानों के कुछ तबकों का उन वहशियों की वापसी पर जश्न मनाना। आज हर हिंदुस्तानी मुसलमान को अपने आप से ये सवाल पूछना चाहिए कि उसे अपने मजहब में इस्लाह, रिफॉर्म और जिद्दत पसंदी, मॉडर्निटी चाहिए या पिछली सदियों के वहशीपन का इक़दार, वैल्यूज। मैं हिंदुस्तानी मुसलमान हूं और जैसा कि मिर्जा गालिब एक अरसा पहले फरमा गए हैं, मेरा रिश्ता अल्लाह मियां से बेहद बेतकल्लुफ है। मुझे सियासी मजहब की कोई जरूरत नहीं है।
And joining us now this evening is actor Naseeruddin Shah. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Shah. Your recent video on a section of Indian Muslims, as you describe them, celebrating the Taliban in Afghanistan has gone viral. It's caused a stir also among a section of the Muslim community. Are you surprised by the reactions to the video, or do you believe that in a hyper-polarized age that we live in, that the moment any celebrity makes a statement, particularly on a sensitive religious issue, it's bound to attract strong reactions in the times in which we live?
I half expected this kind of a reaction. I didn't expect it to be so intense. And maybe I made a mistake by not speaking clearly enough and clarifying that I did not mean the entire Muslim community, which is how it's been interpreted by interested parties. The Muslims have taken offense to it. The Hindus are celebrating it. Neither of this was my intention. I did not at this time, when Muslims are already being demonized enough, when in several instances their livelihoods are being threatened, their lives are sometimes in danger, they are being attacked, they are being openly vilified. There are several right-wing Hindu preachers who have made absolutely offensive statements, propagating violence against the Muslims and so on. This was perhaps an inopportune time to say what I did, but then what other time could I have said this?
You know, that you're saying that this was perhaps an inopportune time to say what you did, but what other time would you have? The reason that's interesting because some of your comments are being seen by even liberal voices within the Muslim community as a trap and a binary that unnecessarily puts the onus on Indian Muslims, they say, of distancing themselves from the Taliban. The Taliban are barbarians, that is universally known, but why should the onus be only on Indian Muslims, is what some are suggesting based on your comment. Why put the onus on Indian Muslims to disown the Taliban?
I said a section of Indian Muslims, and I just said it as a cautionary warning, because there are, as is well known by this gentleman from the Muslim Personal Law Board, whose name I cannot remember, who stated openly that he approved of this. And there certainly is a salient feeling among several of the backward classes that what the Taliban are doing is right and the Taliban should be in power. The Islamic law should rule. This is what I said. Now this is just a time when people are dying to misunderstand and to take offense at anything that is said by anybody. And that is probably what happened. But I did not intend in any way to point a finger at Indian Muslims. I wanted also to point out about Indian Islam, which is something which has ruffled a lot of feathers, where I have people in response saying, what does he mean by saying Indian Islam? There is one Islam all over the world. The practice of it is different all over the world, though. I don't think Indian Islam has ever followed the practices of the medieval, the Middle East Sharia laws. We don't have amputation of arms of thieves. We don't have stoning to death of adulterers. We don't have women being covered from head to toe in a hideous burqa-like garment. We don't have the suppression of women's rights. We don't have women being denied education, women being denied opportunities to work, and women being allowed into public life. That is what I meant by Indian Islam. It is an Islam which has given us the richest literature, the richest poetry, the richest art, the richest music that has always been immortal. It is an Islam that is represented by secular saints like Nizamuddin Aulia and Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti. That is what I was implying. I did not mean that Indian Islam is an entity by itself. I meant that it has its own identity, and it should stick to that identity rather than fall prey to fundamentalist beliefs.
But do you see, Naseeruddin Shah, clash in a way between Indian Islam or Hindustani Islam, as you call it, and the Talibanized Islam or a jihadi Islam? Do you see this as a clash that needs to be addressed front on? You've got to take it head on, as you have perhaps attempted to do.
I think we should outright condemn the beliefs of the fundamentalists. I think we should do that. Every right-thinking Muslim in this country should do that. There is no question of a conflict between us and the Taliban unless they decide that they want Kashmir next after Panjshir, or they want POK next. Then the Indians come into the picture. Otherwise, we are not. I don't think there is any question of a clash, but I don't see why one should desist from expressing one's opinion if one feels strongly enough about it.
But let's also be honest. There is a section of Muslims in this country who feel that they've been pushed on the back foot by the rising Hindutva forces in this country. So when they see the Taliban in Afghanistan taking on Western powers, perhaps they seem to identify with the Taliban, almost seeing this as a war against Islam. Should one be trying to understand at all the sentiments of this section of the Muslim community that appears to in some way identify with the Taliban's war?
It is pretty easy to understand. It is the desire for vengeance that section of the Muslim, again a section of the Muslim community feels the need for, because of the way they have been vilified and the way they have been attacked. But they should also realize that the people whom the Taliban have oppressed, the people whom the Taliban have beheaded, the people whom the Taliban have hanged mercilessly and castrated and God knows what else, they were all Muslim. The Taliban is not going to be bothered to fight for the cause of Indian Muslims and the people who are thinking that they will have another thing coming.
You know, but your comment, Naseeruddin Shah, has attracted attention, interestingly, also of Hindu right-wing groups who say that, like Naseeruddin Shah, more and more Indian Muslims must speak up against the Taliban. What would you say today when you get this kind of endorsement at one level from the Hindu right?
More Hindus should speak up against the rising right-wing fanaticism in India. Some moderate Hindus, it's time they spoke up against it, because it's really going a little too far. When we have absurd statements like love jihad and now narcotics jihad being made by a priest who, I don't know under whose influence he said a thing like that. But this is meant to alienate. Or the Abba Jan statement made by the Chief Minister of UP recently, which is beneath contempt, which is not even worth reacting to. All Muslims do not call them fathers Abba Jan. I didn't call my father Abba Jan. I called him Baba, and so did my Hindu wife. Called her father Baba. But this person is what he is. There's no point even reacting to him. But the fact is, his Abba Jan statement is a continuation of the hate statements he has been spewing all along.
But is there a sense that you get that hate and bigotry is getting normalized, and thereby the space, let's say, for liberal views that reject extremism on both sides, which presumably you're doing, whether it's the Taliban on one side or a group like the Bajrang Dal, which may resort to attacks on minorities on the other, is the space for those liberal views shrinking as people are almost being forced to take sides at the moment in this hyper-polarized society?
We are being pushed, we are being nudged, I would say. But I think the strength of our conviction will lie in the fact that we do not give in to this being pushed onto one side or the other. And it is all being done to create a psychosis of fear among the Muslims. And they are giving into it, which is the unfortunate part. We should not give into it.
Right.
At the same time, the right-wing Hindus are saying Hinduism is under threat. You have all these absurd TV channels saying the most persecuted race of this country are the Hindus. And this is being done to them, and there are temples, mosques which should be reconverted into temples, and this should happen and that should happen. So who do you believe? Are the Muslims under threat or are the Hindus under threat? And if the Hindus believe they're under threat, I must say it's paranoia of the worst kind, because they outnumber us by so much. I mean, as I've said this before, at what rate will Muslims have to procreate in order to outnumber the Muslims? So I don't think being outnumbered by the Muslims is a genuine fear of the Hindus. This is just a bogey that is being created, another lie that's being perpetrated to poison minds even further.
But you know, in a way, Naseeruddin Shah, the worry is society today is caught between Islamophobia on the one side with Hindu victimhood, as you called it, or I'm calling it. On the other hand, you've got those, who believe that the time has come to sort of have a more radical approach. Do you believe that when the focus should be on the core issues like a better quality of life for millions of Indians, we have religious extremism dividing us? How should one emerge out of it? Do you have any solutions?
By more and more liberal people speaking up. I think by more and more liberal people sticking to their convictions and sticking to their beliefs. It's the only way. The fact is that it is rising. The level of political discourse has never been lower, where you have even the highest authorities, powers in this country delivering hate speeches, delivering statements which can inflame feelings, which can inflame emotions. So the only thing that since a person like me is not a politician, I have no hand in formulating policy, I have no hand in influencing beliefs. I think we have to stick to our guns and realize that, also the fault is not entirely on one side. The fault of the Muslim clergy has also been that they have always been have had a tunnel vision, and they have always focused on the wrong things. Instead of focusing on the lack of education among the Muslims, instead of focusing on the lack of job opportunities, instead of focusing on growth, on immersion, involvement into the mainstream, they've been focusing on all the wrong things, like the length of Sania Mirza's skirt, for example.
But when you speak out strongly in the manner you are against the Muslim clergy, there will be those who will say Naseeruddin Shah is a marginal voice within his own community, even within the film industry. You're not a quote-unquote mainstream actor. How do you see it, who will say that you're not representative in a way of the street voice, which in some cases may be much more radicalized? How do you respond to that?
Yeah, if I'm a marginal voice, I am a marginal voice. There's nothing I can do about that, except to keep raising that little voice of mine every now and then, and to be consistently surprised at the kind of reaction it gets. If I'm such a marginal voice, how come everybody is climbing onto my back over the statement I made? So if I am a redundant person who's just shooting his mouth off, then I don't suppose that I have nothing to worry about.
But is there a worry that there is a lack of a progressive leadership both within the Muslim and Hindu communities that is unable to build bridges? Instead, they are building vote banks. And in the case of Muslims, almost as a reaction to the so-called Hindutva vote banks, and we are caught between these competing vote bank politics.
Absolutely, you're right. But there is a lack of progressive leadership anyway. So we blame the Muslims for not having a radical face at the head. He doesn't have to be a Muslim to be a Muslim leader. I think but the question is, will he be accepted? But it doesn't have to be. It's just generally the lack of leadership all over.
I want to come to an issue which troubles me, a sense that popular culture has also played a role in perpetuating stereotypes and, dare I say, in promoting hate. Do you believe, for example, that the film industry of which you are a part has succumbed to these jingoistic narratives of Islamophobia, is actually contributing in a way to what we see around you, whether film industry or indeed TV channels?
It's too early to say whether it's contributing to it, but it's certainly falling in line. Where they're being herded together to make pseudo-patriotic films, and anything that goes slightly even against the grain is to be completely banned and forbidden. Now, the government has set itself up as a higher authority from the Film Certification Board, which is a very worrisome thing. If the Film Certification Board is not enough, what the hell does it exist for? Banish it. And the government would decide what kind of films will be made, and it is easy to see what kind of films that the government will want to be made. Things which whitewash its image, things which paint it as the saintly savior of the country, creating imaginary achievements for it all the time, as is witnessed by the COVID situation in UP and what happened after that. But the film industry has the power to stay independent, and I wish that they had enough courage to do so. Mm-hmm. But they are giving in because their interests are too large and too varied, and they have too much to lose.
Mm-hmm. Is that...
And they are easy targets.
Is that the reason why so few people in the film industry actually speak up on contentious issues? We've seen the Khans in the past. We've seen what's happened more recently to Javed Akhtar when he makes a statement about a Talibani mindset, links it to a Hindu Rashtra, and how he gets targeted. Is there a fear factor forcing the film industry to refrain from speaking out, or is it, as you were saying, the stakes are too high, the commercial stakes are so high that it leads to a certain sense of this pseudo-nationalism that you see in cinema?
It's the fear factor, I think. The stakes are high, no doubt, and these people have accumulated massive fortunes which they're afraid of losing, but how much of it will they lose ultimately? I think it is really the fear factor. Either it is the fear factor, or it is the fact that these people genuinely don't feel the need to state their beliefs. Mm-hmm. Either that, or they don't have any beliefs and they don't feel strongly about anything. I'm not in a position to speak for any of them, but I think that they should have enough confidence in their achievements. They should have enough confidence in the work they've put in, because these people have been stars for over 20 or 30 years, and it's not a mean achievement to be able to be that. And surely they should have more confidence in their own abilities, which they don't seem to have. Mm-hmm. How much will they lose if they lose an endorsement or two? It's not that, it's the harassment that they'll be subjected to. And they find that difficult to take. In any case, film stars find criticism difficult to take. The fact that a person like Amir or Shah Rukh completely withdrew into their shell after making one harmless statement respectively illustrates this. I suppose I can speak because I don't have that much to lose.
So I presume from what you're saying that you will continue to speak out on these contentious issues, on issues that you strongly believe in. But would you rather do it, Naseeruddin Shah, through cinema, or would you do it through public discourse like this?
Frankly, I would rather do it. Yeah, I would rather do it through my work, as I've said earlier, mm-hmm. that we actors express other people's opinions always when we are working. It's the writer's opinions, it's the writer's beliefs, it's the director's opinion and the director's beliefs. We seldom have a chance to express our own opinions. Our own beliefs come across from the choice of work that we do, that we opt to do. Mm-hmm. I would much rather do this through my work, but unfortunately, the number of opportunities that will come our way to express these beliefs through our work seem to be shrinking. And so one has to say what one feels quite strongly, and say it in as direct a way as possible. I grant that one should watch one's words for fear of being misunderstood, because there is a climate of people dying to misunderstand and for people dying to attack.
Let me expand, Mr. Shah, on an issue which, as I said earlier, also troubled me. The fact that we live in this time where jingoism sells, that hate sells. You effectively, the fact is that you promote hate. Many would say or that hate is promoted on television channels, on new OTT platforms, and rather than build bridges between Hindus and Muslims, Indians and Pakistanis, what we now see is more and more jingoism, and that sells more than peace, love, talk of reaching out, of building bridges. Do you agree with that broadly, that that's the sort of mantra today?
At the moment, that definitely does seem to be the case. And some of our biggest figures in the film industry are also part of this jingoistic brigade, which goes on making movies about divisiveness, really, about no longer, if you notice, is the Muslim the stock character who sacrifices his life for the hero. But in a way, one is thankful for that stereotyping having gone. But I wish that there would be a more truthful depiction of the Muslim community. A film like Mulk, for example, is an example of that. It's a no-brainer. I mean, why should divisiveness work? But it just illustrates something that is deeply rooted in the Indian psyche and which is being fed by the powers that be. When you have the topmost person in the country directly accusing a community, when you have the topmost people in the government directly accusing us, even despite what the Supreme Court and everybody has said, the way that Tablighi Jamaat, I have no sympathies for them, but the way that they were demonized, the way they were abused, the way any little excuse to paint a Muslim in black colors is being done does one really have to say that this is not right?
You know, there will be those, though, Naseeruddin Shah will say, Tali do haath se bachti hai. That Muslims also need to now come forward, reject firmly those aspects of Sharia law, for example, which, like in Afghanistan, are giving women a secondary status. We need to see many more voices speaking out strongly on both sides of the divide. I presume you agree with that?
What else was I doing? Yeah, what else was I saying in that brief statement of mine? That we should reject the backwardness of the Sharia law and look afresh at religion. It needs modernity and modern approach, and it needs reform. And the word reform is obviously what has hassled all the orthodox people, that because those who believe that there can be no reform in Islam is the perfect religion, there can be absolutely no need to change anything in it. The fact is that the way they interpret it is a distortion of the teachings of the Quran, and it's nothing new. Whether it's the Bible or whether the Torah or the Quran, it's been interpreted by the takedars of religion to suit their own ends, to continue to hang on to power. That they are the via means to the Almighty. You cannot have a relationship with the Almighty on your own. Of course, we need to reject the backwardness.
I like the word takedars of religion. It's a word I've used before. In conclusion, though, are you optimistic, Naseeruddin Shah, about the future, given your own strong beliefs in the pluralistic character of this country, indeed Indian Islam and Hinduism? Are you optimistic? Do you believe this is a passing phase of intolerance that we are seeing, or do you fear things could get worse?
No, I don't give in to despair. I'm optimistic, and I feel because the secular nature of this country survived for several centuries. What is upon us now has only been there less than 20 years. And I'm certain it's a passing phase. I'm certain that good sense will prevail. And I'm certain that the centuries of harmony that have existed between different religions in this country cannot be destroyed by one or two radical, regressive thinking people.
Well,
though at the moment, they seem to be influencing everybody.
Well, let me end by then saying on those positive words, Mr. Shah, inshallah. Let's hope for the best. Thank you very much for joining me as always and speaking your mind as always. Naseeruddin Shah there speaking out on his comments that have created much of a controversy.